let's talk about a fandom of mine that is one of my favorites for a change, Dandy's World. So, something I've always liked about Dandy's World is the character designs. And well, mainly for the fact that they're extremely simple but still iconic and appealing. And well, the man himself, Dandy, or Dandicus Dancifer, that's his full name, is the perfect example of that, which kind of makes sense considering he is the face of the game. I mean, he has very recognizable colors. That is due to the fact that he has rainbow colored petals, which is kind of the thing that makes his design look, well, less plain. And his rainbow colored petals do not make him gay, by the way, before you say it. But yeah, well, if he didn't have the petals, he would be unrecognizable as a flower, and he will just have a very bland looking design. I do like how his head and body are the same color, as well as his limbs and his cheeks. And well, yeah, there isn't really a whole lot to this design other than the fact that, well, it's iconic and and it's also cute. Which, yeah, the I do like the simplicity of the Dandy Sword character designs. Twisted Dandy, on the other hand, is a completely different story, and one of the few Twisted designs that are actually cooler than the default Toon design. I really like how the petals have like sharper they have sharp corners at the end. And he also has a very unique body shape as a Twisted here, kind of like, I guess, cat-like in a way. And what my favorite detail is how each of his nails, or well, all of the rainbow colors, like on his petals, so that, yeah, it's like a very appealing sort of thing going on. And also, he has, of course, tapes wrapped around his body and sticking out of him, because we all know that Dandy is obsessed with those tapes, even though he sells like gums and chocolates in his shop. And yeah, Dandy is pretty much just a solid Toon design. He is the only Toon without uh he is the only Toon without skins besides Dio, considering they're not playable, so obviously they wouldn't have a need for skins. But other than that, yeah, Dandy, he is a pretty cool boy. Yeah. Astro is one of the main characters in Dandy's world, and one thing that I like about his design is how much you can really tell about, well, his character and all, how he is as a character. Like, yeah, you look at his design and you can tell that he's a little bit like, he doesn't have the biggest best self-esteem. He's also a little sleepy. Him being a moon with with a sleeping cap on, it gives off a good night motif. He's meant to be a more calm and relaxed character. It kind of makes him and Sprout, like the straight men of the other mains who have, very distinct personalities with them. And Astro, he's just kind of like calm and all that. But that's enough about like what his character is like. But this design is really good for him because it's all blue, which looks kind of appealing. He has like a lighter blue body going on, and I like how his face is a crescent moon, which is like the most popular moon shape. And well, one of his eyes is actually a star. Plus the fact that his blanket and nightcap mesh colors together. And yeah, it's a really appealing design going on. It kind of makes it look like he has a robe and he's armless, but to be fair, that does make him, more recognized as a character. And another detail I do kind of like is we do know what his body looks like underneath the blanket. Like, it's been hinted that he has 4 arms, which I always thought was just a twisted thing. Yeah, his twisted design really shows off the 4 arms, which I thought was caused from a mutation from the Ichor mutating his body and all. But no, the Toon himself actually does have 4 arms, as shown with the plushie, where he does have 4 arms going on. So that's just a really interesting design choice that Garden View decided to give him. And underneath the blanket, he also has what appears to be like a black shirt going on or something. Well, like a darker blue shirt actually, and he has like black shorts. Like, yeah, previously he didn't have black shorts, but I assume they gave it to him just so it makes a little more sense for his character, so, you know, he's just not completely naked underneath the blanket, because that wouldn't make any sense at all. Pebble's design is easily the most simplistic of all of the toons in Dandy's World, where the characters already have simple designs. The concept and execution of his design also is pretty much what you expect. Like, he's a rock who acts like a dog, and that's pretty much it to his design. But, you know, there is a little bit of things that I do like going on with the design here. Like, I like how his body isn't all the same color, with his legs being a slightly lighter shade of gray, which that is kind of a recurring detail with most toons that have limbs that are a different color from like their body, so they don't all just have the same color going on. I do think that is a cool touch there. And he also has like clovers on his cheeks, which is a detail that kind of symbolizes that he is, you know, Dandy's pet. And it makes sense him being a rock, since flowers and rocks are usually next to each other. So yeah, they kind of make sense in like an environmental sense, I guess, if that's the word. Of course, since he's a dog, he has a little dog nose going on, and he has a big tail, which does just look like a carved out rock, which, yeah, that is also great. And, well, the main thing with his design that kind of stands out is his eyes that are big and bulging, which, yeah, that makes him more unique than the other toons who just have flat faces. His eyes actually have dimension going on. But other than that, Pebble's design doesn't have much. With his simple design, that's kind of why he has a lot of skins going on. Like, sometimes he can have, like a flower on his head, or crystals, or even like a frying pan of an egg for his skins there. But his twisted design is a completely different story, looking radically different from his character, as he looks a lot more like a feral dog, and the dog features are more accentuated in the twisted design, considering he has ears and actual paws, as well as a canine mouth. I like how the 2 fangs in his mouth kind of look like the front legs of his toon design, which I'm not sure if that is the intention, but if it was, I think that's pretty cool as well. Similar to Twisted Dandy, Twisted Pebble is cooler than his toon counterparts, which, you know, to be fair, it is because the Pebble's design isn't meant to look cool or anything, but instead cute. And the Twisteds aren't supposed to look cute. They're supposed to be scary and kind of intimidating. So it would make sense they wouldn't look that way. In case you couldn't tell, we are going in order of the main toons who were released in order. And after the mains, I'll do the regular toons, probably just in a random order. But anyways, if we're not including Pebble, V is probably the most standout design out of the mains, for a lot of different reasons, such as the fact that she's one of the only green toons that we have. Well, besides Squirm and, to an extent, Sylvester. But either way, she is the only green toon who has green as her main color and nothing else. And she also has a TV for a head, making her the only toon who is somewhat robotic in a sense, since there's no other robot toons as of yet. And of course, due to her head being a TV, while it's an obvious design choice for any characters with a TV head, I like how her face is on the screen. So yeah, her face is a screen, meaning that it could change into different expressions and other things, of course. We see this in her hit animations, and while we're not including skins in the shorts here, I do like how all of her skins changes the hit animation face to something different, like her buffering and such, and not just being a regular hit face. She of course has gray limbs, limbs that are different color from her body and head, which is a good way to add the gray from the top of her antennas into the design. I do like how one of the antennas is bent also, like it's some good asymmetry going on. And she has a bow tie since she is, of course, a game show host. And while I'm not trying to bring any fan-made works into talking about the toon designs, but I do genuinely wish that she did have like a suit going on since she is a game show host, and it would make sense for her to be wearing a classy suit going on because it fits with her occupation and such. And while, her body is pretty much just basic, but she does have one other little thing going on, that being her tail, which is also how she holds her microphone. So, it's a microphone tail. So, yeah, it's a pretty unique design that not many, well, some Dandy's World Toons do actually have tails. But yeah, she has a microphone on it. So, that's kind of a cool way to interpret something she normally uses into the design. And yeah, it's kind of an underrated thing. Sometimes it's not seen, sometimes it is though. I think when you're playing the game though, you don't usually see it. But yeah, V is a pretty good designed toon. Another thing I like to mention is I like how her face and bow tie are the same shade of green as well, so that's more color consistent. Shelly's design is honestly just alright. Like, in my opinion, compared to the other main toons, her design is probably the most bland there is, and that could have been fixed if she was given a couple of details. I mean, her design, of course, it does have some interesting aspects about it, like for example, her head being an ammonite shell, which is a type of extinct mollusk and such, so that's a good way to incorporate an obscure animal into a character like we've never seen an ammonite character before. And while of course by default this gives her a unique head shape and such, and as for her facial features, they are pretty standard, like having 2 eyelashes and a blush, and well, a grin. A lot of characters, they have this kind of face, including Sprout and such. And yeah, there's nothing much going on with her head, and her outfit is pretty lacking, which is kind of a big deal since the outfits are kind of like the main thing with some of the toons, even if some toons don't always wear full body outfits and such. But yeah, the outfit, I do wish it was a bit more interesting and such. Like, I like the overall dress skirt thing that she has going on, but other than that, she's just wearing like a regular tan shirt. And I don't know, I do think there's just a lot of things missing with her design. Honestly, I wish that she wore like gloves and shoes, but a lot of Dandy's World Toons are always designed to be barefoot or barehanded. Honestly, never understood why they don't just give the toons gloves, because that would make a lot of them interesting, besides just in like outfits and stuff. And yeah, she's an archaeologist, and she's a paleontologist and all that. She's a dinosaur lover. So like, wouldn't she be dressed up like she's ready to explore rather than something extremely casual and stuff? And something that doesn't really cover her that much? I mean, at least her Twisted is pretty cool. Well, yeah, the top half is kind of pretty much the same thing, but just ichor spilling down on her head and stuff. But I do like how the bottom half of this design is actually like a dinosaur's body. So like, I guess the ichor did some crazy mutations to her, where her bottom half is just a dinosaur now. The very thing that she likes. And yeah, I do like that about her. I also forgot to talk about Twisted V. And yeah, Twisted V probably has the worst design of all of the mains, considering it's just so basic. And she's just literally taller, and you can see more and such. And her face is kind of just like an angry face. Like, there's nothing really going on. Sprout's design isn't as bad as people make, in the Dandy's World community. It's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be, since he does have a solid design, even if there are some personal additions I would add to it. And well, he's unique out of all the main toons for the fact that He's literally the only one who's like food. He's a strawberry, well, besides Gordy. But out of the actual mains, the 5 mains, because Sprout was the last regular main to be added in the game. Yeah, he's the most standout because of that. Of course, him being a strawberry means that his main body color is red. And that might not seem like a big deal to you until you realize that out of the 5 mains, Sprout is the only one who's red. He's the only red one, so like they completed all the colors for the mains and such. So, you know, that's a very good thing about him. And, you know, he has limbs that are a paler color from his body. And I like how his hair, being the strawberry leaves, you know, it looks like hair, like he's got bangs on the front of his head. Also, his cheeks, you know, they kind of somewhat look like, his freckles somewhat look like strawberry seeds. Like, you know, obviously he's not going to have yellow seeds all over his head because then he looks like he has chicken pox or something, so I get why they didn't add that. And his scarf looks really nice. Like, I like how the scarf separates his head from the body, and, you know, its colors of white and pink. The stripes on them, you know, that's also very good. Although, I do agree that maybe he should have an apron going on to signify that he is, in fact, a baker. You know, I don't really care that Sprout is naked to begin with, though, because, like, aren't there a bunch of other Toons in the game who are naked? I mean, look at characters like Glisten. I mean, nobody talks about him being naked. People redesign him with clothes, sure, but, you know, people don't make a big deal out of him being naked, do they? But, you know, I do admit that I may be a little biased here because he is my favorite Toon, but I wouldn't want to change this design. Like, I would just keep him this way. But it would be nice if he did have an apron with some gloves. I know people are going to say, well, that's what the salted caramel skin exists for. Even though there are a couple problems with it I have personally. Like, one, I don't like the caramel that's on his face. You know, like covering one of his eyes. And second, I just think the colors are way too dark for him. Like, another thing I like about Sprout, I like the pastel red and green that his body is made out of. Like, the pastel colors, they look nice. I'm not normally a pastel color fan, but this pastel red is really appealing to me. So yeah, his default isn't that bad, guys. Like, come on.